Here we go. So we're starting with the planning board, and if you recall my other videos, my plan has always been to create 3 lines. And this is the 3rd line that I'm building now. The first 2 are done. And so this is where it's going to start. And one thing I want to point out is that I've actually done a lot of planning in this, and that's critical. I've laid out all the steps that I have to take in building this 3rd line to make sure that I'm not doing anything out of order that's going to cause me to go back and rework things. So that's my planning sheet right there, the steps I'm going to follow. Here's the line itself. Now you have to imagine that the track that you're seeing laid here is elevated by 2 inches. So I'm going to have 2-inch risers coming. This is going to be like a train yard. And the 2-inch risers are the train's going to travel up this way on 2-inch risers all along here. And then right about at this point is where the 4% incline is going to begin. So if I start the incline there, it's going to take up about 8 feet of track, and the incline will end here. At this point in the layout, the track's going to be elevated by 6 inches. So you can see what you're seeing there in the foreground is the track being elevated 4 inches. So it's a little bit higher. In fact, to give you more of a perspective, here you see the first line that I laid down there, that's on a 1-inch riser. The second line that's coming around, that's on a 4-inch riser, and the train you see in the back will be 6 inches up. And so that will carry all the way over to here. And then in the corner, this is where I'm going to install that wooden trestle bridge on the corner. And that's going to be my first balsa wood project to make it from scratch. So I'm interested to, actually excited to get started in that. I've never done it before, so we'll see how it turns out. And then, so at this point again, on that elevated wooden trestle, the track will be up about 6 inches. And it's going to run along this way, and then it's going to start a 4% decline on the other side of these trees, right about here. It'll be on a decline all the way around the corner, and it'll end at the 2-inch risers that I started with right here. This is where the decline ends. And then again, in this area here, I'm thinking about putting in like a dry gulch overpass bridge. Whether or not I do that will depend on how well the other bridge goes. If I turn out I have any kind of talent in making that bridge, I'll probably do a dry gulch bridge right there. But this will all be like abandoned railway cars and a whole new scene all in this area right here. So that is the plan. And my very first step was to lay out the track itself. Let me show you that without getting too much of a shadow in there. And I've done that. I've test run a train, and it runs pretty smooth so far. So I'm ready to begin the project of laying down the 2-inch risers as my initial base. And that's what you're going to see me do next. Okay, so as I said, the first step is to lay the track out, give it a couple of test runs, and make sure everything is in place. And if you're satisfied with that, the next step is to take a pen and outline the edges of the track. Once you're done with that, you can remove sections of the track and install the risers. Here you see me installing the first set of 2-inch risers. I'm going to just put the riser and center it directly over the outline of the track that I made, and secure it down temporarily with some foam nails. The whole reason we're doing this is because as we go, we're going to be adjusting, leveling, and making little adjustments here and there. I've got all of the 2-inch risers laid down now across the entire line. But again, everything is just down with those foam nails, so I can easily make adjustments when I have to. Here's where I'm going to be making that trestle bridge. You can see another video on exactly how I did that. And we're just double checking to make sure everything is level and straight and positioned properly for the track to be laid on it. And we're looking good so far. So now it's time to put in the 4% inclines and the 4% declines. These are woodland scenic products, the 4% inclines and declines take up about 12 feet of track. And they're just pinned into place temporarily. So now we have everything temporarily put into place. I'm going to put the track back on the risers. And I'm going to put this all together and end up doing another test run of the train. Again, just one final check to make sure everything is working properly before I glue it down. Once I do that, to glue down the risers, I'll be using what you've seen in other videos that I've done, the Woodland Scenics low temp glue gun. And we're just going to glue down all the risers in place, remove all the pins after it dries. And there we go. We've got our track all laid. Now the track isn't permanently set down yet, but all the risers are permanently glued into place. Well, I've got the third line completely installed. All the risers are in and glued down. I installed all the road bed and glued that down, and then I installed the track on top of that and glued that down. And I even painted the track, and you're going to learn why I did that in a different video. But the track is in, the third line is in. I've test run the trains, it runs perfectly. So I'm very happy with how it's turned out. Now here's an update for you. I made a few changes to the plans that I gave you in an earlier video. You might recall one of the plans was for the third line, I was going to use a 4% incline right here. I changed that. Actually, I did install the 4% incline. And what I found out when I started to test run my trains was that you need a pretty strong locomotive to bring a load of cars up a 4% incline. So I changed that. I ripped out the 4% incline and I reinstalled a 2% incline. It's a much more gradual incline, and the locomotives can handle it easier with longer lines of cars. And aesthetically, it looks a little bit neater as well. So that was one reason that I pulled out the 4% and put in the 2%. Here's another reason. You might remember that over here I had this cutout. And through the cutout, you can see the trains running on the first line here. And on the second line, they'd be running across here. All in the backdrop of Lake Shelby, in the mountaintop and all of that. And the problem with the 4% incline was that all of this was blocked. You couldn't see any of it. And that totally took away from what I was after in terms of this visual. So it's for those two reasons that I pulled out the 4%, put in the 2%. Took me about 3 days to make that change. But in hindsight, I'm glad I did it because I'm happier with the way it turned out. The trains are going to run smoother and it's going to look visually more pleasing, I think. So one of those changes that you make, but it turned out to be a good change. My next step is to fill in all these areas with some plaster cloth to make little mountains out of that, kind of connecting these two spots in between here. And I have this blank spot, if you will, along the entire area that I have to fill in. I'll be using two different products. The first product I'll be using is the old standard plaster cloth product. You've seen me use this in other videos in other parts of the layout. But then I ran across another product that I hadn't tried out before. It's from Woodland Scenics and it's called Shaper Sheets. Try saying that fast 3 times, Shaper Sheets. This is a neat product. It has an aluminum foil backing and kind of a gauze, a white gauze on the front. And you cut it out to whatever shape you want, and then you crinkle it up to whatever shape you want and install it. And this stuff is gonna, for me, is gonna come in really handy, I believe, in this back area where you see there's that space between the second line and the upper third line. I needed to create some type of a gradual connection, if you will, between those two lines, and Shaper Sheet's going to be the way to go for that. So this will be my first time using this. You're going to see how it turned out in future videos, so I'm excited to try this out. It looks like it'll be pretty neat. And then finally, I'm going to move the camera around. One other change that I've made. It's right over here. Remember I said before that I was thinking of making this area an abandoned train station. I've changed my mind. Actually, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make this area a garden scene. So there'll be walkway paths through gardens with trees and flowers and shrubs and a pond scene, So it's going to be completely different than the abandoned road scene. And that's just, again, just personal choice. I got to thinking about it and I just thought I'd have more fun putting together a garden scene. So that's one change here. The other thing that I have to do is I have to put in the road bed still on this. In the next video, what you're going to see is you're going to hear me talk about how I painted. I actually painted the third line track. You're going to hear how I did it and why I did it. And then we're going to ballast this. So I'll leave you with a few scenes of all three trains running together on all three lines, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for tuning in.